couple questions for you. First of all, how many of you have food in your house? Right? How many of you have more food than you need in your house? We were cleaning out, you think about it, we have pantries and refrigerators and chest freezers and upright freezers and secondary refrigerators. How many of you have more than one refrigerator or freezer in your house? Oh, yeah, that's a lot of us. So we were cleaning out our pantry this week and found an expired pasta from 2 years ago. 2 years. You know what I do? I go up to the refrigerator that is stocked with food and I open the door. How many do this? I got nothing to eat. And then I order pizza or go to McDonald's. Don't go to McDonald's. No offense to any McDonald's burger, but it's no good for you. It's really bad. I can testify. But yeah, I'll go to the refrigerator, like, there's nothing to eat. I'll look at the pantry, there's nothing to eat in here. You ever do that? Of course you do. We all do. Or I will go to the closet. How many of you have closets in your home? How many have drawers of clothing and closets of clothing that are just full? How many of you have stuff that you haven't worn in 3 months? I'm not just talking like winter clothes. I know it's summer. How many of you have stuff you haven't worn in 6 months? A year? I have stuff I haven't worn in a year. And I clean out my closet on a fairly regular basis and go donate the clothes up at Bible's Permissions in Highland. If you have extra clothes, well, hold on to them for just a little bit. I'll tell you a little bit about that in a minute. But yeah, I will go to the closet and be like, I got nothing to wear. What a joke. I have so much clothing that in my dressers, the drawers are actually like bowed under. Like I have to reach in and lift up the drawer just to get it out. How sad and pathetic is that? I mean, that's horrible, right? You can say it. That's right. You say, amen, Shawn. Your situation is horrible. You're a clothes hoarder. I am. Or, how many of you, or me included, so how many of us, when we see a guy standing next to the side of the road with a sign, go, I can't wait to help that guy? Oh, a couple of you, a couple hands, a couple honest folks, nice. But what's our general response? It's not good. It's not compassionate. I'll tell you that much. No, I remember the story that I heard when I lived in Minnesota. A friend of mine was pulling up on an on-ramp to get on a highway, and there was a guy standing there with a sign. And a pickup truck pulled up behind him, and a guy jumped out and grabbed the sign from the first guy, and he went and got in the truck and drove off. It's like they were punching the clock. I mean, it's like they were taking shifts. You know, it's like, oh, it's 12 o'clock, time for my shift. And it makes you cold, right? It makes you a little more callous, a little bit like, well, it makes me that way. Or we'll do this. We see somebody asking for money, and what's our first thought? Well, you're just going to use it to buy drugs, alcohol, sure. And we have that suspicion and that cynicism and that cynical attitude of just going to use it to buy drugs. I'm not giving my hard-earned money for that. Instead of trusting God to work it out in some way. Why would we do that? Or I'll see a guy begging for money with a sign, and I think to myself, that's not a bad way to make a living. And hear me out for just a second. Stand outside for 10 hours a day. Now, granted, the elements may stink, okay? Maybe a little hot one day, maybe a little cold one day, but you stand outside for 10 hours with a sign, and 3 people pull up and give you $5 each. That's $15 an hour over the course of $10. It's $150 a day tax-free. See where my mind goes? That's not compassionate at all, is it? That's not very nice. It's not what Jesus would say. And so what do? I just drive on by. Somebody else will give me $5, $10. It's not very compassionate. It's not very nice. And we attempt to justify and rationalize our cynicism. We attempt to justify and rationalize. They're just going to use it to buy drugs. They're just going to use it to buy alcohol, or and we've all heard the stories. I went up to a homeless guy and I gave him a cheeseburger. I don't want that. I want your money instead. And it just serves to just layer of callous upon our hearts. Layer and layer of callous upon our hearts. To the point where we don't want to help people who are poor. whether it's the government or us. And we get mad at the government when they help the poor, right? It's like, why are you raising my taxes to help the poor? Isn't that somebody else's job? The government should not be in the job of helping poor people. And so we want lower taxes. But we don't want to support the organizations that are helping the poor. Or we don't want to get involved in church and take the lead and say, we should help poor people. And we don't. Because that means we would actually have to tithe. And we'd actually have to give a sacrificial kind of offering to God in order to help the poor. I don't want to do that. Or we'll think to ourselves, the reason that they're poor, we'll justify it this way, the reason that they're poor is because they're late. Or they're ignorant. And we have no compassion, such little compassion for the poor in our country, in our world, in our lives, in our churches, such little compassion for people. They're just going to use it to do this, they're just going to use it to do that, or they don't really need it, or get a real job. Right? That's how we feel. And I think that is completely wrong. Because that is not what Jesus says. That is not what Jesus did. It's not what Jesus wants us to do. And so you may be thinking, I see where you're going, Shawn. I see where you're headed. You think, I know your political leanings now. I know where you stand on this, that, or the other thing. You have no idea. You have no idea just how convicting this message is for a guy like me. Because I have those same attitudes. I have those same attitudes. Get a job. I don't want to give you money because I'll just give you food instead. Oh, you don't want my food? Yep, just confirmed every suspicion I ever had. You may think, that Shawn, he's such a nice guy. Not always. Not always. Ask my wife. She's the honest one in the family. I want to look today at a parable that Jesus told as we continue in our series called The Short Stories Jesus Told. And this is a toughie. I'm telling you right now. I sat down to write this message, and I read. What I'll do is when I sit down to write a message, I'll read the passage in like 5 different translations. And so I just read it and read it and read it. And every time that I've read it in a different translation, whether it was the New King James or the New American Standard or the New Living or the New International, why are they all new? Or the English Standard Version, as I read the 5 versions, every time I read it was more convicting than the last. This is a tough one, folks. But it's in there. And Jesus meant what he said when he told this story. We're looking at short stories Jesus told. It's the parables from the book of Luke. And these parables are just Jesus' way of explaining huge truths in very simple ways. And he often does it to communicate truths about God, about salvation, about himself, about the kingdom, and about the church. And today's parable is really, really tough. It's very convicting. And so my prayer is that you would be convicted by it. But not just to sit there and feel bad and go, oh, well, okay, nothing I can do about it, and just walk out of here. No, I hope that with the conviction that you feel in your heart today from Jesus' words will transform your life and transform your view of the poor around us and the poor, whether they're in our church or not, that this will transform the way we as a church deal with the poor among us. Let's look. Luke chapter 16, verses 19 through 31 is where we are. It's on page 741 of the Bible in the chair in front of you. If you didn't bring a Bible today, you can grab one on the chair in front of you. It says it's on page 741. We're going to look at this in 4 little chunks today. And we're going to talk about the rich man and Lazarus. Now, this is not the same Lazarus who was raised from the dead. This is a fake story. That story of Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead is a real story. But I want to look here at verses 19 through 21 to start. There was a rich man who was dressed in purple and fine linen and lived in luxury every day. Pause right there. Excuse me. So this rich man is dressed in purple. First of all, purple was one of the rarest dyes for clothing, and therefore it was the most expensive. Only the super wealthy could afford purple clothing. So we know this guy is very, very rich. He dressed in fine linen. Now the fine linen they're talking about is his undergarments. It's his underwear. He had expensive underwear. That's how rich this guy is. He wears expensive clothes, expensive underwear, and Jesus says that he lived in luxury every day. We're talking champagne dreams and caviar wishes, right? Is that how it goes? Champagne wishes and caviar dreams? Whatever. He's living the lifestyle of the rich and famous. Okay? He is living high on the proverbial hog. It would be a literal hog because he's a good Jewish man. But verse 20, at his gate was laid a beggar named Lazarus, covered with sores, and longing to eat what fell from the rich man's table. Even the dogs came and licked his sores. Let's talk about this for just a second. He has a gate. The rich man has a gate, which means he has a wall around his compound, around his house. And he has a gate. He lives in a gated home. And so at this gate is laid a man named Lazarus. Lazarus is a form of the Hebrew name Eleazar. And that name literally means God helps. Well, apparently not yet. Because this rich man has a beggar laying at his door, laying at his gate, who is covered in sores and is begging for money. He's paralyzed or something, or a cripple. He's got no job, no source of income. Like I said, he's sick, covered in sores, and so much so that the wild dogs, the scavenging dogs, that would go around and eat dead bodies of animals are coming and licking his sores. This is a disgusting picture, right? It's disgusting. That he's got open sores that dogs are licking on his body. This is gross. And I'm sure it's what the rich man thought. Why is this disgusting beggar laying at my gate? The dogs that we were talking about, like I said, those scavenging dogs, we would consider them to be like rats. So you got, basically it's like rats are eating his flesh. That's how gross this is. Let's keep going. Verse 22 through 26. The time came when the beggar died, and the angels carried him to Abraham's side. The rich man also died and was buried. In hell, where he was in torment, he looked up and saw Abraham far away with Lazarus by his side. So he called to him, Father Abraham, have pity on me and send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, because I am in agony in this fire. But Abraham replied, Son, remember that in your lifetime you received your good things, while Lazarus received bad things. But now he is comforted here and you are in agony. And besides all this, between us and you a great chasm has been fixed, so that those who want to go from here to you cannot, nor can anyone cross over from there to us. I call this the twist, for a couple of reasons. One, in the Jewish mind, there was no way that the rich man would have ever ended up in hell, because he's obviously favored by God. That's why he has all this stuff. That God was looking upon him with favor, and therefore he's one of God's favorites, and he would automatically go to heaven, right? That makes sense. It's not according to Jesus. No, this is a twist. In that the poor man, the stricken one, ends up in heaven, in paradise, whereas the rich man ends up in hell, in torment and agony. See, the rich man lived heaven on earth, and the Lazarus lived hell on earth, and now they are reversed in the afterlife. And the other twist in this is that the rich man, who wouldn't lift a finger to help Lazarus, wouldn't even scrape off the crumbs off of his table and give them to Lazarus to eat, who ignored Lazarus and whatever reason justified or rationalized his disdain for Lazarus. No, this rich man instead now is begging. He is the beggar, begging for Lazarus to come and give him a drink of water. See how the roles were reversed? The rich man couldn't lift a finger to help Lazarus, and now he wants Lazarus to come help him. It's the upside-down ways of the kingdom of God. Keep going, verses 27, 28. He answered, Then I beg you, Father, send Lazarus to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers. Let him warn them so that they will not come to this place of torment. And sure enough, the rich man pleads with Abraham to send Lazarus to his brothers so that his brothers will repent. And now all of a sudden the rich man actually cares about someone other than himself. He finally cares about others, because his entire life he only cared about himself. And now he cares about other people, his brothers, because he doesn't want them to come to the place where he is. And this is Abraham's response. Abraham replied, "They have Moses and the prophets. Let them listen to them." "No, Father Abraham," he said, "but if someone from the dead goes to them, they will repent." He said to them, "If they do not listen to Moses and the prophets, they will not be convinced, even if someone rises from the dead." And in a way, Jesus foreshadows his own resurrection, that Jesus was crucified on a Roman cross, and he died for our sins, and God raised him back to life on the third day. But sure enough, even when Jesus was raised from the dead, not everyone believed him. They saw him. They still didn't believe that he was actually raised from the dead. We find that out in Matthew 28. But Abraham says they have Moses and the prophets. They have the entire Old Testament that tells you to be kind to the stranger, that tells you to love the poor and to take care of the poor among you. And rich man, you wouldn't do it. And apparently your brothers aren't doing it either because you're concerned about them now. And all of this parable, like I said, it's so convicting to me. And my own attitudes. And it's convicting to me about my own cynicism and my own calloused heart and my own cold heart. Do I care about people? Do I care about all people, including the poor and poverty-stricken? I mean, do I have a heart of compassion that beats for people who are less fortunate than I am? Do I actually love people the way Jesus does? Do you? Do any of us truly love people the way that Jesus does? Do any of us love people, especially the poor? Because that's the point. The point of this is to have a heart of compassion and love for poor people. But we don't want to do that, do we? No. We'd rather just rationalize and justify our own callous hearts. So I got a couple challenges for you this morning. The first is check your heart. Where are you in this whole thing? How is your heart? Do you love people? Do you love poor people? Do you care for those who are poverty-stricken and downtrodden? Do you actually care for them? I mean, to the point where you're willing to do something for them? Or do you just cynically say, let the government take care of them, but don't raise my taxes? Because that's what we'll say. Oh, yeah, take care of some of them. I mean, those who are really, really needy, you can take care of them. But those who are just scamming the system, because see, that's, again, we get cynical. We get callous. Because we hear stories of people scamming the system. We hear stories of people who are not doing what they're supposed to. And what do? We call them lazy, we call them stupid, we call them ignorant. Get a real job. Right? Any of you ever said that? Don't raise your hands. So, when it comes to helping the poor, what's your attitude? The second challenge I have for you is to get involved here at GFCC. Do something. Let's do something together to help poor people. I think we can. I think we should. I really think we should. About 6 years ago, we did something called the Giveaway Garage Sale. We had it here at the church. And we collected tons and tons of clothing and small appliances and stuff like that. It's just stuff that people had in their homes that they didn't need anymore. And it was just taking up space. And so we filled the fellowship hall with tons of stuff. We invited a bunch of shelters and stuff to come in and just take whatever they wanted. And then we ended up giving a bunch of stuff to the Salvation Army after that. It's been 6 years since we've done something like that. I want to do it again. And I gave the challenge to the first service, and I've already got somebody to organize it. Kim Bond was going to organize the whole thing. But she's going to need help. She's going to need help with this project. And I had about 5 or 6 people come up and say, I want to help with the project. I can't organize it, but I will help with it. And so I'm here to challenge you today that if you want to help out with the Giveaway Garage Sale, then I want you to see me after church. I'll be right up there. And just give me your name, and I'll give your name to Kim, and we'll get in touch with you, and we'll get this thing started. So like I said, I got the organizer. I just need help getting people to do the project. And then I need you to go through your closets. I need you to go through your life and go, okay, I'm never going to wear this again. I'm never going to wear that again. Too many pizza rolls for this item. So I want you to do that. And I want you to seriously consider how you can make a sacrifice to help the poor among us. so that we can help poor people in our area, poor people in our community. Or if there are people in our church, if there are people in our church who are really struggling financially, we need to help them too. We need to help them. And you know what that means? That means you have to get to know each other. It means you have to get to know people. It means you have to invest in each other's lives and say, you know what, I want to get to know you because I'm worried about you. And if you know that someone's struggling and you don't do anything about it, whether it's come to the elders and say, hey, somebody's really struggling, and is there any way we can help them out? Or come to me and say, somebody's really struggling, is there any way we can help them out? What is your attitude towards the poor? What is your attitude towards the poor among us? How can we help them? But of course, we'll say, oh, let the government help them, but don't raise my taxes, or let somebody else, let another social service organization help them, but don't expect me to give anything. If you want us to help the poor, and you're not willing to tithe, or you're not willing to give an extra offering, or to give sacrificially, there's only so much we can do. So consider how you can support the church with your generosity, so that we can do more to help the poor and needy among us. The last thing I want to challenge you with is this, don't live for earth. Don't live for earth. It's so easy to live for the things of this world, but we need to take care of each other. I like what they did in the book of Acts. Acts chapter 4, verse 32 says this, all the believers were one in heart and mind. No one claimed that any of their possessions was their own, but they shared everything they had. And then verse 33 says this, and God's grace was so powerfully at work in them all, that there were no needy persons among them. And from time to time, those who owned land or houses sold them, brought the money from the sales, and put it at the apostles' feet, and it was distributed to anyone who had need. That's what the early church did. And what was it a result of? It was a result of God's grace. God's grace was so powerfully at work in them all. In all of them. In every single one of them. The grace of God was so powerful and changing their hearts and changing their lives and stripping away those calluses and warming their hearts to one another and to each other's plight, to actually love and care for one another and be concerned for one another, that they said, you know what, I got this piece of land, I'm not using it, not developing it, I'm just going to go ahead and sell it, give the money to the apostles and trust them to give it to people who had need. And it says there were no needy persons among them. None. How great would it be if we could say that? Because there's nobody in need in our church. Or there was nobody in need in our community. Or there's no one in need in Northwest Indiana. Because a church like GFCC cares about people who are in need. Amen. How great would that be? But see, the problem is we live for earth. We don't live for heaven. We'll live to store up treasures on earth and try and collect and collect and collect and hoard and hoard and hoard and get and get and get. And we forget we're not going to be here very long. Sorry. Don't mean to be a downer. You're not going to be here that long. 7, 8 decades at the most, maybe 9, maybe 10, maybe 11 if you're lucky. But Rick Warren says the 7 or 8 decades you got on this planet are nothing compared to the trillions of decades you will live in heaven. For all eternity. So don't live to make heaven on earth. Don't live for heaven on earth. I like this quote from Randy Alcorn. Get this. The best of life of earth is a glimpse of heaven. The worst of life is a glimpse of hell. For Christians, this present life is the closest they will come to hell. And for unbelievers, it is the closest they will come to heaven. This is the closest you're going to get to hell, folks, is earth. Because what's waiting for you after this life is heaven. And you will be there forever and ever and ever. So why are we trying to store up stuff for hell? It doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense at all. Instead, let us store up treasures in heaven by giving away what we've got to help those in need. To those who are living hell on earth, let's give them a piece of heaven. Let's give them heaven. Because we've got the promise of that already. I don't need anything on earth. I've got heaven waiting for me above. So why would I live for earth? Stuff's going to either break down or fall apart or get rusty. It's not going to last. But the treasures that I store up for myself in heaven by helping those here on earth, those last forever. Forever. I like what it says in the book of James. James 2:15-16 says this. So if clothes of brother or sister is without clothes of daily food, If one of you says to them, go in peace, keep warm and well fed, but does nothing about their physical needs, what good is it? And we do this. We get here on a Sunday morning, we talk to each other for a few moments and say, hey, how you doing? I'm good. How are you? Great. How's it going? Excellent. You know, and we're lying through our teeth. We're lying through our teeth. We're struggling. People are struggling and hurting in so many different ways. And we won't take the time to just invest in each other's lives and say, you know what? How are you really doing? Is there anything I can do for you? Because I want my life to be the life of a servant for my brothers and sisters. Whether it's something that you need for your physical needs or your spiritual needs, your emotional needs, whatever I can do for you, I want to do for you. I want to live my life as a sacrifice to help other people. One of my favorite quotes, and this is like my life quote, it's not scripture, but it should be. What do we live for if not to make life less difficult for others? What do we live for if not to make life less difficult for others? How are you living? Are you making life better for other people, or are you making it worse? Are you giving people heaven on earth, or are you putting them through hell on earth? What are you doing to change a life in this life for the glory of God in the next? So my challenge for you today is simple. Where's your heart? What are you focused on? Things of earth or things of heaven? You're going to help the poor? You're going to help the needy around you? Or you're going to let God melt away that cold, icy heart? You're going to let Him strip away the calluses from around your heart so that you can look at other people and go, I don't care what you're going to use the money for. I don't care how you got here. I don't care what's going on. I'm going to trust God that He's going to provide for my needs, and He's going to use me to provide for yours. And I'm going to help you now. And I don't care what you do with it. If you go and blow it, if you go to the casino, if you go to the bar, you go buy drugs, whatever, that's between you and God. He will take care of it, and I will trust in Him. And I will trust in Him.